Welcome to the presentation meeting of the Trieste Next 2024. I'm Sophia, and as you might have noticed, I'm an AI-generated avatar. Today, I'll present you this edition of the festival. Over the next 3 days, we will explore the horizons of intelligence. This is the theme of the 13th edition of the Scientific Research Festival. At Trieste Next, we will discuss both human and artificial intelligence, ethical boundaries, and the new frontiers science is facing. Where will artificial intelligence take us? What impact will it have on research? Medicine, robotics, astrophysics, food and nutrition, and the environment are just a few of the scientific fields we will delve into at Trieste Next. This is the central theme of Trieste Next, featuring over 100 events in English and Italian, the Literary Award for the Scientific Book of the Year, and 70 activities for schools. More than 300 internationally renowned speakers will be in Trieste. And don't forget to visit the 40 exhibition spaces and open labs in Piazza Unita. Before we welcome the guests of the next event, on behalf of the organizers and co-organizers, I would like to thank all the scientific institutions of Trieste, City of Knowledge, as well as the institutions that collaborated with us. A special thanks goes to the festival's main partner, the partners, and content partners for their crucial contributions. Thanks also to the media and technical partners. Lastly, a heartfelt thanks to the 200 volunteers who made this edition possible. One final note. I'd like to remind you that the next session will last 75 minutes, with the final 15 minutes dedicated to your questions. Please also remember to check the updated event schedule on www.triestenext.t, which you can access via the QR code. Enjoy the event and have a great festival.
Okay, good evening. Good evening, everybody. My name is Matteo, and I work for the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. I will try to explain in the easiest way, also because we are on a Friday night with the nice weather, warm and kind of happy everybody to be here. And I wanted to start in thanking you for being here, because maybe for me, for us, for the people who work for the European institutions, it's not the best moment, it's not the easiest moment to work and to reach the objectives that Europe has, not only in terms of science, but in terms of its politics, its policies. Because in addition to what the society has as challenges and issues to be tackled in this period, we have been living this year a quite complicated year for the European institutions from a political point of view. Because maybe the main reason to be said here is that not all the people who are convinced that science should be the basis of the political actions of the society is needed. There are many people who say the opposite, so they don't really believe in what science can do for the good of the society and of the politics. And so it's a very challenging moment where there is more and more need for the evidence to inform and to be the basis of the policies. This has been true in particular over the last few years, when we had so many events who put science at the heart of the action of the politicians. Let's think about COVID, for instance, or even in a more, I would say, geopolitical, strategical way, what happened over the last couple of years with the wars, the aggression of Russia in Ukraine, and all the facts that complicated, in a way, the scenario. And so the task for an institution who want to put science at the heart of the politics, of the policies of Europe has become even more complicated. We have to deal with an information overload in science, which comes from both reliable and less reliable sources. And our task is to process all this and all the information that comes into the scientific area, and to make it digestible for who? For those who decide, for the policymaker at the European level. And so making easy what is complex is our challenge in the institutions. And this is particularly challenging, as I said before, because not everybody is anymore convinced that science should be taken into account as the basis of the policies. These data, these data go back to 2021. So when the COVID was at the top of the outbreak, and 68% of the people in the European Union were agreeing with the sentence that scientists should intervene in the political debate to ensure that decisions take into account the scientific evidence. So there was a solid basis for us to go ahead with our action in the institutions. But now the context has changed, as I said, and now, rightly this year in 2024, after the elections of the European Parliament, the European Commission, the European institutions have been changing a little bit the priorities. You have heard for sure over the last few years talking about the Green Deal. Green Deal was one of the most important policies of the European Union, together with the attempt to make Europe more digitalized, so the digitalization of Europe. These priorities are being a little bit redrafted towards maybe a more conservative, I would say, scenario, putting, for instance, competitiveness as a key word. So making all what is done also to decarbonize Europe and to realize the objectives of the Green Deal more with a bigger attention towards the industry and the economy rather than to the environment. And also issues like defense, security has gone very much into the scenario. This is the result of what has happened this summer after the European elections which took place in June. So there is a slight reshuffling of the priorities. And this is the context where my institution works, because the Joint Research Center has this task to provide evidence-based knowledge and science to support the EU policies, and then at the end of the day, to positively impact the society. We provide the science which is independent to the policymaker, and then the policymaker decides the choices that they want to take for the political context. We try to do that using three methodologies or three approaches. One, to anticipate. Anticipation is one of the challenges that the JRC faces, to present to the policymaker what are the trends of the science and of the society, not only in the short, but also in the medium and in the long term. Integrate means that we try to have an holistic approach towards science and towards the policies. So not only work in silos, but policies in the European Union have been for too long maybe taken only from a sectoral perspective. Now our idea since a while is to integrate. And so look at the policies in an integrated way. Just to give you an example, one of our more recent reports was dealing with the aspects that demography has on climate change. And demography is a science which impacts not only on climate change, but on many sectors of the society, including social policies, economic policies, and so many others. So integration is another aspect of our work. I will give you a couple of examples now. And then impact, to see first if our scientific work has an impact on the policy, and second, what is this impact, and if this impact can help to also there reshuffle the policies of the European Union. So our methodology, we call it portfolios, scientific portfolios, which are the building blocks of our approach. This is written too small, I guess, so I'm not sure that you are able to read. But it's all the issues that we cover, and they relate, as I said, to the priorities of the Union. Mostly are linked to the Green Deal, so the sustainability, the green transition, the decarbonization, safety of the and security of the energy and of the transport and of the climate sources. Then a big part of it is linked to the objective of digitalization of Europe. So, for instance, over the last years, artificial intelligence has become a real issue and a real priority for the work of the JRC of the European Union. It's in a way the theme of this festival as well, the horizontal theme of many of the events of this festival, and then so many others. But the idea here is not to keep them sectoral, but to face them and tackle them in a holistic way. Now I went a little bit, too much. It goes a little bit alone, this pointer, but in any case, I wanted to show you this. These are some of our tools, the tools that we use to implement this, the role that we have. Knowledge centers have a kind of sectoral approach, so they go into depth in many sectors. One of the most consolidated, I would say, in our activities is, for instance, the one who relates to disaster and risk management. We have been using over the last few years Earth observation, satellite observation to manage the risk for natural disaster like tsunami, earthquakes, but also floods, droughts, and also man-made disasters. We have been working also on the conflict in Ukraine from many aspects with this knowledge center. And while competence centers are more methodological, they try to answer the big question how you can manage data in a world where data are increasingly quantitatively and also qualitatively more numerous and more difficult to manage. So in that sense, we have competence centers on text mining, analysis, scoreboards, indicators, technology transfer, and many other sectors. By the way, all the data which are produced by these tools are publicly available in the website of the JRC and in the website of the European institutions. So they are at the disposal of any scientist, not only in the European Union, but even beyond, to use them and to work even with the Commission. We have more than 1,000 partenariats, partners, scientific partners all over the world who help us to carry out this task. For instance, over the last years, I would say that 50% of our scientific work was devoted to the Green Deal. In terms, for instance, of transport and clean energy, using, as I said, geospatial systems to assess the infrastructure or availability of land, or in the sector of biodiversity. We have been working a lot on forests, for instance. And in these sectors, we have been coordinating the data who are available for the member states. You know, the European Union has 27 member states, and that in most cases were not coordinated, didn't have the same approach. And to put them together was a challenge which we faced and we are trying to solve over our activity. We are also going into new sectors of science, maybe less related to hard science, to chemistry, physics, and biology, but also, for instance, tackling the issues like demography, I mentioned, and migration. We published a lot of data who are being used by the European and by the national authorities to work on these issues. Also, artificial intelligence. I will give you a couple of examples on that. In terms of impact, which is the third area of our work, I've said that we have been making a lot in terms of impacting the European legislation. About more than 80% of our work was considered by independent evaluation instrumental for shaping and implementing European policies. And almost all of these reports, we publish about 2,800 reports over the 5-year period, which was covered by this analysis, had these tangible effects on the policy. So we can, in a way, say that the European policies are based on a solid, evidence-based input, which is something important to tell, because citizens basically don't know. And you see it when they go to vote. Parties who are less convinced of the relevance of a scientific input in the policy cycle are getting more and more space in the electoral scenario, not only at European level, but also and maybe especially at national level in the member states of the European Union. So it's really a system which tries to take into account all those who operate in the scientific world, not only experts, but also government research laboratories, public research laboratories. Even in parliaments at national level, there are countries who have parliamentary advisory units and libraries, which they use with our help to try to ensure the science enters into the policy cycle. And we do it not only, as I said, in traditional, I would say, scientific sectors, but also in new areas. Like, for instance, foresight. Foresight is an important part of our work. It's a discipline for exploring and shaping the future. We try to do it, we try to see what are the trends for the future of science by putting together all those who are interested in this process, and with that, looking forward into the medium, long-term future. This creates, at European level, it has been creating quite an important collective intelligence about what we expect for our society. And it's building plausible rationales of possible future developments. And so we create tools for putting this into in the table of our political makers and also for the scientists. For instance, an interesting report that we published quite recently is on future risks. So risks was an aspect of this foresight work. So what are the risks that the society faces? In this report, we analyzed 40 future possible risks which were identified, which were gathered in 10 clusters. And these potential developments, the potential developments which lead to risks, but also to opportunities for the society. And in these clusters of risks, 3 were assessed as potentially existential for the humanity. And they were, of course, analyzed in the report. The environmental degradation, the environmental disasters, and the loss of power by humans. Of course, I first, I'm not an expert on foresight, and then maybe we don't have time to go into the details for all this area, but the important is that for you maybe to know that we are working on that, and we are trying to, maybe differently from the politicians, to have a look a little bit to a future which is a little bit more farther away than what the policy cycle is used to in their work. Horizon scanning, for instance. It's a systematic examination of potential threats, opportunities, and early signs of future developments which are at the margins of current thinking and planning, but may have an important impact in the future. We may call it, in a more kind of serious way, exploratory research. We do it also that to see if there are new sectors that maybe today they are not relevant, but they may become relevant in the future. And so identify them it's also quite important to have a look into the future. Megatrends, it all belongs to this foresight activity of our center. What are the long-term driving forces that are observable now and will most likely have a significant influence in the future? Here, for instance, artificial intelligence is one of the issues, and many others. Of course, natural disasters, I mentioned, and climate change, sustainability. So what can we observe in terms of the big trends that the society is going to face over the last, not year, but maybe decades, even to the end of the century? And digital transformation is one big part of this new areas where we work at the Joint Research Center. It's the issue of maybe the main issue of this festival, and it's something that we try to tackle not only in terms of opportunity. It has been said that data is the new gold, but also in a multidisciplinary perspective, because artificial intelligence affects the society, affects education, affects the ethical issues of a society and of the people. It has an impact on the economy, on the resilience of the societies. It is an important part in the cybersecurity activity that we run. Energy, of course, data. Data is the main issue, maybe, and also what happens in other parts of the world, like China, for instance. We have been doing reports on each of these issues, and we try to put all these available, as I said, to the policymaker at European level, in order to take decisions which are respectful vis-à-vis the values of the European Union, which we all live and, I hope, also believe in. So artificial intelligence has, for instance, a huge societal and ethical impacts, as I mentioned, which we try to tackle in our analysis from many points of view: privacy, data protection, dignity of people, identity of people, and then from a more societal impact on fairness and equity, collective human identity, responsibility, accountability, transparency, even democracy, and trust in the society and in science. At European level, we run tools, as I said, and maybe in this area, in the area of artificial intelligence, one of the most important tools, relevant tools, which is much used by our colleagues in the other parts of the institutions, is AI Watch, which is the knowledge service of the European Commission to monitor the development, the uptake, and the impact of artificial intelligence in Europe through, as I said, a series of different angles, like indicators, the evolution of the technology, so the technology at the center, of course, also, the economic perspective, how AI affects the economy in Europe, a social perspective, education and skills, what is the academic offers on artificial intelligence in the European Union, in strategic actions, because the strategic approach to European policies has become important, even more relevant now, also at international level. So how to help the strategic autonomy of the Europe through AI. The key enablers like microelectronics, so techniques, cloud and edge computing, and so on. And then data. We are, the final aim on data is to create a common European data space. And then also very relevant for us is the AI, how the artificial intelligence can help and support the activity of the public sector. And so we carry out also as I said, consolidated and traditional activities. Tomorrow, a colleague of mine is in another workshop, and she works in a very nice file that we run, which is called Science and Art. We try to put science and art together to see what are the potential to also explain and involve more people in the society and other sectors of the society towards science. And I mentioned because these projects belong to this to the colleagues who will speak together tomorrow here. We are also quite recognized in terms of scientific excellence, because this is also important to say. We want to be a reliable partner for policymakers. We are institutionally those who have to provide the scientific input to our colleagues in the other institutions of the European Union, but we have to be reliable. And so we have been trying to assess how we are excellent in science, and the results are quite important, because we, both in terms of number of publications, so in quantity, but also in quality. I don't know if some of you studies in some of the most important universities in Europe, but we are recognized by the scientific community at the level of the most important and relevant universities in the US, in the EU, but also beyond. And we perform quite well in terms of scientific input in all the sectors of our science. Maybe the most important over the last few years has been environment and the climate change, but also social and economic sectors. Agriculture, we have been supporting very much the common agricultural policy, for instance, through Earth observation and satellite observation of the resource, energy and transport, and many other sectors. Just to give you an example of what maybe some of you remember, some of you are young, maybe they don't remember, the Dieselgate, the case where some car producers in Europe were giving fake data to the policymaker on emissions, on vehicle emissions. This process has been put at the attention of the policymakers and of the European Union, thanks to the activity of our laboratories in the area of vehicle emissions. We have about 12 laboratories on vehicle emissions, which measure vehicle emissions for all the vehicles, from cars to trucks, and now also of electrical vehicles. Of course, they don't produce fossil fuels and CO2, but they produce impact on the other communication sectors of the on Earth. And so we also evaluate that impact. And based on the work of these labs, we were at the origin of the process, which then which was called the Dieselgate, where some of the car producers were punished for their fake declarations, and from that, all the European regulations which exist today on vehicle emissions were based on our results. What is called all the codes, the Euro 4, 5, 6, and 7 code for vehicles, they were based on the results of the studies of my colleagues who work on vehicle emissions. Yeah, of course, we are at the basis of the European legislation, and so we are quite relevant from that point of view. Maybe even more important for you is to know that our science is open, so there is a quite complete open access to all the findings of our science. Because we, of course, believe in transparency, because we have a public obligation. We are a public institution which want to put our work available to the scientific community and to the policymaker. And so 95% of our studies 2 years ago and also last year were published with an open access approach available to everybody. And of course, we also cooperate, because across the whole work, not only within the European Union, mostly within the European Union, but also with partners in the US. The lab that I mentioned before on interoperability of the electrical cars and the smart grids has a twin lab in the US, so we work very much close to with the Americans in that area of standardization of the electrical vehicles, and we work with other partners in different areas all over the world. We have also an increasing cooperation with African partners over the last couple of years. And so I wanted to also give you some information on who we are, how big we are, and also what are the opportunities for young scientists to even connect with us and maybe come to work with us, for those who may be interested. We are about 3,000 people, of which 3/4 are scientists, researchers, who work in all the sectors that we cover. I mentioned only a few this evening, but we actually cover almost all the sectors of the science. We have about 50 large-scale research facilities and more than 100 databases online with a lot of economic, biophysical, nuclear, and models in many areas of science. I don't know if many of you know that we are not based basically only in Brussels, like all the other colleagues of the European Unions or the European Union of the institutions are based, but we have our scientific sites in 5 member states of the European Union, and the bigger site is in Italy. I work in the site which is based in Ispra. Ispra is in Lombardy, near to Lago Maggiore, a very nice area for those of you who know. And they are based about 2/3 of the scientists of the JRC. About 2,000 people work in Ispra. And 40 out of the 56 big laboratories that we have are based in Italy. The other sites are in Germany. In Karlsruhe, it's our, let's say, nuclear site. In Hale is for measurements and reference materials. Petten is our energy site. Petten is in the Netherlands. And then the most recent one is Seville. Seville in Spain is where our colleagues run most of the job on foresight and on anticipation. In Ispra, we have, it's a kind of a village because there are 2,000 people who work there with more than 40 laboratories. It's a big campus. And it is the 3rd location of the European Commission after Brussels and Luxembourg. It's the bigger location of the European Union in Italy. And we have many infrastructure. Up there you see the Interoperability Center for Electrical Vehicle and Smart Grids. It's an anechoic chamber where you put vehicles inside and you measure the effect that they produce on other systems like antennas, satellites, communication tools, even we measure their batteries, recharge batteries and recharge stations, and so on. The other in this picture relate also to the area of vehicle emission. We have a nice laboratory on water. The European Laboratory for Structural Assessment is where I try to tell it as you may say it on a Friday evening, we simulate earthquakes because we build structures for building and then we link them to a big reaction wall, which is the second biggest in the world. The first one is in Japan. And we shake them basically against that wall to see how the construction materials react. And in order for us to be able to define standards for the construction materials, not only for normal buildings, but also for critical buildings like power plants, nuclear power plants, infrastructures, road infrastructure, rail infrastructure, and so on. And so on. I can mention many. Maybe the last one that I mentioned is the Crisis Lab. Here behind is where we kind of have a real-time activity on natural disasters. And we transmit the information in real time to about 20,000 operators all over the world, not only in Europe, on earthquakes, tsunamis, floods even in anticipation, because this work is used mostly by operators in civil protection, humanitarian aid, emergency intervention, to try to minimize the effects. And then, of course, even here, we put all the data available for the policymaker to try to legiferate and take measures in this area. Of course, it's easy to say also that this is an increasingly important sector, also because of the climate change and of the impact that it has on the planet. Maybe it's interesting for some of you who work in research centers to know that we also have a policy of open access to our research infrastructure, because out of the 56 labs that we have, 39, the big majority, are open to collaboration with other scientists in other research centers, mostly of Europe, but also of the countries which take part and belong to the Horizon program, which is the main research and innovation program of the European Union. The lab on earthquakes, for instance, is one of those who is open to this collaboration and this collaboration with external partners. And all the information is, of course, in the site of the JRC, which is called, you just Google EU Science Hub, and you find all the information on our activity. I have also a lot of links here in the slides. I don't know if the slides can be distributed to those who are interested. It would be great because most of the information is inside. And then I wanted to give you, in the last part of my intervention, some information for those of you who may be interested in now or in the future to come to work with the JRC, because there are quite a few opportunities. For those who want to do research in the areas that I mentioned, with this approach of being at the service of the policy-making process, There are possibilities if you are a researcher with up to 6 years contract as what we call, now this is a bit bureaucracy, I'm sorry for that, we call contract agents staff FG4, means quite at the highest level of the research. You can be hired as a research assistant or lab technician, and this level is called FG3, so a little bit less relevant. There are opportunities for grant holders and PhD students through a program which is called Collaborative Doctoral Partnership Program, which is open to the collaboration with universities, basically. We have many of them. And then as a seconded national expert, if you are working in a public administration or in a public scientific entity in the member states, you can be seconded by your country to the JRC for a period up to 4 years of contract. This is for the member states an opportunity to understand better how we work, basically, by the exchange of staff. You want maybe also to build a career as a civil servant of the European Union, but there you have to pass through a competition, an open competition, which are regularly published by the European institutions. There are also opportunities to traineeship at the JRC. Some are specifically scientific, and you would be based then in one of our campuses, Halle, Karlsruhe, Petten, but mostly, as I mentioned, in Ispra for a period between 3 and 5 months, and or as a Blue Book trainee, as we call them, in Brussels or Seville, with a less scientific profile, a more administrative or political profile, I would say. And of course, if you're not a researcher, there are other opportunities as administrator, assistants in finance, budget, communication, security, legal affairs, ICT, of course, and others. Doing science for policy as a researcher at the JRC. You have the QR code there with the opportunities which are open. And you read here some of the conditions and also of the opportunities for those who apply and are successful. We have basically a link on the recruitment which presents all these opportunities. Basically, this is a contract for what we call a contract agents, which are 36 months, 3 years, as a first period, renewable up to a maximum of 6 years. After the 6 years, you have to go through an open competition if you want to stay. Information on the traineeship, both scientific and Blue Book. I've given already the basic information at the beginning. It's, of course, paid traineeships in both cases. One is, as I said, scientific, I think it's there, and the other is more administrative or political in the policy areas. To become a permanent civil servant, which may also be in some scientific sectors, not only a general civil servant, you have to go through the competitions which are published by EPSO, which is the European Personal Selection offices, in 2 main categories. One is the main administrators are the managers, and the IST are the supporting services. Put it that, no, it's there. I see it there. It's there. The QR code for our vacancies. And maybe the last information for those of you, this is the only slide in Italian, because we also publish news and information in the languages of the of the member states. If you are interested in knowing what the JRC does in Italy in this case, but in all the countries of the European Union, you can subscribe to this newsletter, which is, as I said, published in the national language and presents the most important, the most relevant results of our analysis for the countries. For instance, in this news, this news talk about the CO2 emissions in Italy, if they grow or if they go down according to our studies. That's it, more or less, what I wanted to tell you. I started from, I would say, what is our institutional and scientific role to make sure that science is in the policy-making processes, and is the basis of the policies of the European Union. Then I gave you some more, I hope, concrete and useful information for those of you who are interested in our activity and in our science and also in our structures. Now, if somebody has questions of any kind, I'm here to answer. I don't know all our studies, our reports, all the results of our science, but I hope I can give you some answer based on my experience of almost 30 years working in the European institutions and 10 in the Joint Research Center in this in the scientific service of the Commission. Yes?
Hello, I'm Paolo. I study computer science from the University of Trento. And first of all, thank you for your amazing discussion explanation. And I want to ask you, since we were talking about science backing a policy-making decision, about the AI Act, because at the moment I'm working on a study where we study and assess the impact of Gen AI on businesses. And in this study, we also take into account the AI Act, this new piece of legislation. Is for sure it's innovative and very front guard with respect to our competitors. But I'm asking, what are the science and the data behind this kind of act? Because maybe some people regard it as very advanced. Many people say it's maybe a roadblock for innovation. And so I'm just wondering if you can maybe give some details on the science behind this decision. And thank you.
Yes. In one of our scientific directorates, we have 7 scientific directorates, is called Data and Digital Transformation. This is the service which is mostly based in Ispra, also in part in Seville, which carries out research in the area of artificial intelligence. What I've seen is that over the last 3-4 years, artificial intelligence has become maybe now the most important sector of research for the JRC. Our colleagues are requested every day to go around and speak about artificial intelligence. And the AI Act is actually the first attempt at European level, but maybe with even with less comparison at that level of deepness in all over the world to regulate. But it's very difficult to regulate because the sector is changing every day, and I'm not saying every year. It's really changing every moment. So, for instance, when you try what my colleagues have, for instance, done a work to try to make it compatible, the act, with the regulation on privacy, the new regulation on privacy, which entered into force also a few years ago in the European Union. Also there, you have to, they have been making a lot to try to make it compatible with the other legislation. But this is changing every day again, because both the privacy legislation, the application of the privacy legislation, and the application of the AI Act changes. So this is the big challenge that they face. But the tools that they used are those which I presented, and the sectors are more or less those who are included in the AI Watch. The AI Watch is our instrument in the AI, and it is the basis of our analysis. So all the ethical part, for instance, the impact on the society, the impact on the technology. I'm sure that in the next 5 years, with the new political orientation of the institutions, competitiveness will become a big theme. So how the industry, the European industry, can use better AI to become more competitive. Because we know already that we are lagging behind as Europe compared to other parts of the world. And sometimes Europe has the problem that by regulating, somebody says by over-regulating, you are putting hampers, obstacles to the competitiveness of our industry, for instance. So all these are the issues that will be in the agenda for us over the next couple of years. If we have been looking more on the technological and on the ethical, societal side so far, I guess that in the next couple of years, on artificial intelligence, we will be working more on the side of competitiveness. Also defense. I've heard recently that there are much links between the colleagues who work on artificial intelligence and on cybersecurity, for instance. Cybersecurity is also becoming a huge issue, and putting together the two sides is another aspects on which they are working very much. But have a look if you are interested in this AI Watch, and you will find all the results of our data and also of the basis of the work that we have been put at the basis of the AI Act and of our colleagues in the other institutions who have been drafting the text. We don't draft texts. We don't draft European laws. We only put the science available to the other parts of the Commission and to the European Parliament to make their job of policymakers. We only put our reports available to them. That's our role, basically. Somebody who wants to come to ISPRA to work? Who may be interested? Who has a scientific profile of you? Almost everybody. So maybe when you finish your career, your academic career, you may think to come to work, because the JRC, by the way, is the Directorate General of the Commission, which has the lowest average age of the staff, because most of our people are young scientists who are there to run projects for a period which goes up until 6 years, as I said, sometimes less, in some cases a little bit more even. But this is very important for us to have young people who come and see things from another perspective, I would say. And that's for this reason, it's quite, I think it's positive that the scientific part of the institution has the lower average age of all the services. So you're invited to come and join and put yourself candidate for coming. There is another, yeah.
Hello, thank you for the interesting talk. I wanted to ask what would be like the main differences between doing a PhD at your institution and maybe at a university? Because I think that maybe it's less focused experiment-wise and maybe a bit more also like thinking in broader scales of like policy applications and like the general development of the European Union.
Yeah, thank you for the question, very interesting. When I joined the Joint Research Center 10 years ago, most of the people were, let's call it, pure scientists who were making their science in their laboratories because maybe they were convinced that their science was good, and they were carrying out research a bit more what we can call blue research, blue sky research, as people do in academia or in pure research centers. Over the last few years, it has changed in the direction that you mentioned. The science that our scientists do is at the service of the policymaker. So there is a huge effort in knowledge management, for instance, in how you communicate your science to those who are not scientists, but they have to use it to make it become something political, a measure, a code, a standard, a legislation. And that's the difference, maybe. Correctly, as you mentioned, it's more that you become kind of an applied scientist towards the policy making and the societal challenges that we face. Then, of course, you will always keep your sector of competence, because our nanobiotechnology lab works on nanobiotechnologies, okay? Works on genomics, on life sciences, and you are still a specialist, but your science goes to that objective, to the policy cycle. And that's the main difference, basically.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Maybe a follow-up, slightly provocative question. Are there any effects, like, let's say, on lobbies, from lobbies on policy development?
Well, I was, last week I was in Rome. We had a hearing on, I tell you this as an anecdote, but it answers your question. And it's actual, it's very recent. We had a hearing at the Italian Parliament basically on sustainable resources. And there is a word, or a couple of words, that in Italy start becoming a problem, at least for some politicians from a political part of the parliament in Italy. And these words are Green Deal. If you say Green Deal, it's like saying bad words to some people today. And they asked us that question: if we are independent, or if our science is there to put forward a predefined line, in that case, the Green Deal. Our answer was, and I'm truly convinced about that, because that's our mandate, to be independent of any interest, economic, national interest, because our interest is the European citizen, is not the national level, and economic, industrial, and political lobbying or influence. And I can tell you that this is true, because we don't go into the policy discussion. We put our reports to the policy maker, but we make ourselves the choice of what to study. And that's why I insisted a lot also on foresight, on anticipation, on trying to understand where the science is going. Because only by doing that, you can, in a way, take the politicians out of their short-term reasoning, because their only problem is the next election, and think about more in a longer perspective. This is one of the reasons, but the other reason is also for us to decide ourselves what are the sectors that we have to study. And from that point of view, I can tell you we are honestly quite, we are independent. the same question should be asked to our colleagues in the policy services of the Commission. Because, for instance, our work on the Common Agricultural Policy, we put them available to the Directorate General for Agriculture of the Commission, who run the policy, make the proposal for the policy, which then has to be approved by the Parliament and the Council. And there is where there is a big lobby action in Brussels. Brussels is the second city after Washington in the world for numbers of lobbies. Lobbies, for those of you who are Italian, is not a nice word in Italian, because it means kind of interest, which maybe goes sometimes against the public interest. In Europe, it has a little bit more positive image. Also because there is a registry of lobbies in Europe, which is quite strict in terms of rules. So lobbying is not as heavy as in other contexts in the European level, at the European level, but still the policymakers in Europe, of course, are under the pressure of lobbies. The JRC maybe it's the only island within the European institutions which is quite safe from that, and we are quite independent by mandate, but also in the reality. This I can tell you quite honestly.
Great. Thank you for your candor and honesty. Thanks.
Thank you. So maybe I'm invited to conclude because it's I only have the time here, but I don't know what time is it. It's 10:15, so we have to finish. I hope you find it interesting, at least parts of it. I hope you took the information that was of your interest there, and I hope to see you again, maybe in one of our campuses in Ispra or elsewhere among our crowd. If you see me in the cafeteria or in the canteen, you come and say hello, and maybe you say, yeah, it was useful that night in Trieste. Thank you.